All right. Well, thank you everyone for attending this April Innovators for Good webinar. Today, we will be discussing volunteerism and social impact. I'm so excited to facilitate this discussion because April is National Volunteer Month. So today we have 4 panelists to share with you their experience in being a volunteer with API Scholars. Before we start, here's a quick agenda of what to expect within this hour. My name is Karen Joy Dizon. I'm the development manager at API Scholars. Part of my role is to cultivate partnerships with employee resource groups and affinity groups. Also to communicate with our partners different ways to engage throughout the year, especially through volunteerism. During this webinar as well, I'll give a brief overview of API Scholars and our impact. I will discuss further our 4 core programs that we run year long. And then we will segue to the panel discussion. And also to conclude the webinar, we'll have a Q&A. So throughout the webinar, attendees, if you have any questions that come to mind, please utilize that Q&A function and we'll ensure that your answer will get answered if it's not through me, but also through panelists as well. And then stay tuned towards the end because the closing remarks will provide more information on how you can engage through volunteer, and then also more details on what's to come for our next Innovators for Good webinar in May. And before we start, just wanted to say a big thank you to our partner Walmart. They are sponsoring the Innovators for Good webinar series. All right, a little bit about API Scholars. I'm really proud to share that we are the nation's largest nonprofit organization that supports underserved Asian Pacific Islander students in their access to higher education. We were founded in 2003, and to date, we have over 7,000 current scholars and alumni. Just to give you an overview of who is our typical scholar, based off of our current cohort of this year, majority of our scholars are first generation and also live at or below the poverty line. I've also included some notes on this slide, and feel free to read through that. It kind of just demonstrates that collectively and within the community, our impact. And please, I just wanted to point out that we have 800 active volunteers annually. So we could not do the work that we do, run the programs and services without our volunteers. All right, so a quick overview of our programs. We have 4 that we offer year round. So the Elevating Leaders Summit. This is designed for first and second year scholars to kick off their experience as an API scholar by connecting them to the unique community that we offer, engaging them in leadership development workshops, and preparing them for their first step in their educational journey. We also offer 2 mentorship programs. The professional mentorship program is geared towards API scholars in the later part of their college journey or early career. Professional leaders provide one-on-one support to scholars seeking advice on entering and navigating the professional environment. We also offer a peer mentorship program, and this is where we pair first-year API scholars with scholars who are 3rd year and above. And mentors provide support to mentees as they transition from high school to college. Last year, we piloted a new program called the Industry Expert Series. And this is a webinar series that provides an opportunity for our scholars and alumni to learn from professionals about a particular career field, gain professional development resources, and learn about the journey to secure an internship or entry-level job. And lastly, I'm really excited to share that we have a new program that we will start to implement, which is the Mental Health Initiative program, and that will start next month. All right, so now is the time that we've all been waiting for. I'm really excited to start off this panel discussion. I'll ask each panelist to introduce themselves. Please state your name, share a little bit about who you are, and also within your introduction, could you please tell us what motivated you to volunteer with API Scholars? You know, nowadays there's so many organizations that you can engage with, so why us? Evelyn, would you mind kicking us off?
Yeah, no problem. Hi, everyone. My name is Evelyn, and I volunteer for APIA because as a group facilitator, because I'm a first generation college student. So I wanted to become the person that I wish that I had when I was starting off college.
Great. Thank you, Evelyn. Cliff, would you mind introducing yourself?
Oh, yeah. Hi, everyone. My name is Cliff Shaw. I'm here in Orange County, California, Southern California. And I was originally a Gates Millennium Scholar in the inaugural year of 2000. Went to UCLA and it helped me fund my last 3 years of college, including my study abroad year in Japan, which was amazing. And so just been really fortunate, feel really blessed to have had that scholarship, to basically a full ride scholarship. You know, I was an out-of-state student from Hawaii, studying in Los Angeles and also in Tokyo, and just feel really fortunate. And I volunteer with API Scholars as a mentor for a bunch of recent API scholars, and just I feel really fortunate to be able to give back in that regard.
Great. Thank you, Cliff. How about you,
All right.
Christian?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and jump in. Hi, everyone. My name is Christian, and I am proudly a first-generation college student, graduated from UCLA, and the product of two Filipino immigrants. And part of my mission to volunteer is similar to what other panelists have shared, is also to give back, to think about what are the ways in which we can help young API leaders sidestep some of the trauma and drama that you hold as you navigate through life. And part of my call to action is to be able to leverage my inclusion and optimism to help others serve their communities better. So I volunteered in a number of different capacities, but it's also being able to give back to a community that has given me so much. And with that, I'll pass it on to the next panelist. Thanks.
Hi, welcome everyone. I'm Shubha Chanappa. I work for General Motors. I have been associated with APIA for about 2 years now, and I came to know about APIA through my employer, General Motors. I'm part of the outreach committee there, and we started working with APIA, and I had done volunteering activities around. I work in Warren, Michigan. So we are very close to Detroit, and I have worked mainly with the Detroit public schools earlier. But when I really got this opportunity, what interested me was, I could really connect with my Asian background, with the community. We have the same values, similar backgrounds and similar experiences. So I have been we were sort of doing the background work on a couple of activities with APIA where we have done, social media presence and I think resume writing workshops with APIA. I think there is one coming up next week as well. So I was sort of in the background, but I really took upon the opportunity to mentor as a professional mentor for APIA scholars, and I've really enjoyed it. So I'm here. Let's talk more. Thank you.
Great. Thank you all panelists for those wonderful introductions. All right, so let's dive in. I would love to learn a little bit more about how was your volunteer experience with us. Many of you have been mentors, speakers, group facilitators, so please share with us what activity did you participate in and what did you learn from it? What insights would you like to share with everyone today?
Thanks, Karen. I'll go ahead and jump in. So I'm going to elaborate on the activity that I participated in is the Industry Expert Series. And while I also serve as a mentor for an APIA scholar, What I really love about those panel series is the ability to expose people to different perspectives. A lot of times when you navigate careers, you're thinking, okay, if I want to go into finance, I only can do finance roles, etc. But the reality is that you can work in a wealth of different careers within different organizations and in different companies rather. And one of the benefits of the industry expert series is that you just get that exposure of where people are working in terms of their work being more people focused or their work being more finance focused or skills or technical focused. But it's a great opportunity to just kind of widen your aperture to think about career, not just in terms of something that you do, but it's really an extension of who you are. And so it's really about finding mission-driven, values-driven work. And I've really enjoyed. So I served on a nonprofit panel since my work at Shores and Scholars as a scholarship recruiter was in line with that philanthropy and nonprofit themed panel. But there's also a ton of other ones, people working in the healthcare industry, people who are working in technology. But it's one of the many different ways to give back. And so I'm really excited to be able to speak to that particular activity. So I'll pass it on to the next speaker.
Hi, Kevin. So I started off as a professional mentor, and I'm a mom of two boys. They're teenagers, so 19 and 16. And I see the confusion in them, like any technology career, right? What you study in college might not be exactly requested in any job opening, right? So we go through so many classes, they learn so many tools, they learn so many things, but that's not exactly what's maybe not required. They don't really see it on any job openings out there. So I have seen the dilemma, I have faced it. So for me, I'm a computer science background, right? But from when I was in school, I thought computer science means, okay, I'll be always working in a certain field. For me, computer science is an applied science right now, right? It is used everywhere in so many different fields. So a lot of people think, oh, I have to look only at Apple or Google if I'm a computer science graduate, right? My options are only there, but I'm working in an automotive company right now. So what I wanted to sort of make others understand, right, including my own kids who are faced with the same dilemma, is that your opportunities are not limited, right? Wherever you go in right now, everything is open, right? You can usually tweak what you learn, and you can really adapt to the challenges of a job profile. So technology is everywhere. Whatever you do, finance is everywhere. So it's just the mindset of trying to learn a few different things and adapt yourself to different scenarios. So that is what I wanted to tell people out there, right? And also don't limit your opportunities. The world is your playground, right? Just because you're in a certain region, don't just think that, okay, I'll be only working in this area, right? Given an interesting opportunity, you should be able to, I guess, if you're interested, right, ready to move, take up the challenge. So don't just limit your opportunities. So with that, I think Christian or Cliff, yeah.
Thanks, Shubha. Can I sign up to be your mentee?
Sure.
Hey,
I love
very
that.
inspiring. I think Christian and Shubha, I agree on all fronts. I mean, it's I work as a mentor. I volunteer as a mentor ever since the program started last year, kind of pre-pandemic. And in total, I've done like 5 mentors last year, and then mentees last year, and then 3 mentees this year. So a total of 8. And every mentorship has been a little different. I think it's been a two-way street in terms of kind of mentorship and teaching and learning. I've learned that just as much, if not more, than the mentees have learned from talking to me. And it's kind of been like a mutual beneficial relationship where, you know, we just talk about stuff and learn about goals and dreams and I do my best to kind of help them navigate, you know, the critical decisions that they're making, you know, as they come out of college and enter the workforce. And so it's been great. And to Shubha's point, I think, you know, don't limit yourself. I know, I think as Asian Americans, especially, there are a lot of self-limiting beliefs that kind of just are hardwired, at least for me. And I have kind of work through all that. And I think, you know, you do that by, you know, believing in yourself, trying new stuff, getting out of your comfort zone, you know, taking risks. And I think, you know, with the opportunities that APIA Scholars, you know, allows, you know, you have that space and you have that ability to actually take those risks and try stuff and really explore your curiosities. And so great work with, you know, APIA is doing in terms of like supporting that, you know, not only from a financial perspective, but also from kind of like a mental and an emotional perspective as well. So proud to be a part of it.
Great. Thank you very much for that, Cliff. Just wanted to provide some space, Evelyn, if you'd like to contribute in this. I know you're the only panelist that was a group facilitator in our ELS program. So would you like to kind of share about what you learned from being a group facilitator?
Yeah, for sure. So I was a group facilitator for the Elevating Leader Summit. And so I was in charge of leading discussions for my own cohort of freshmen. And like I said earlier, I'm a first generation college student. And a lot of my cohort members were also first generation college students. So it was just nice to be able to like talk to and give them information that I wish I had. And then what I think I learned is that it's really hard to be yourself when you're 17. And I know exactly how they feel. I'm sure everyone here like knows how hard it just feels, how uncomfortable you feel in your skin, especially being from the Asian American community where you're told to just keep your head down, do your work. And that's like very prescribed in our ethnicity. So I think it was nice having not only like a space for me to talk to them, but also give them a space to be vulnerable and just be an Asian American student struggling through something and have a space to talk about it. So it definitely taught me a lot about empathy and also like learning from the new generation too.
Great. Thank you so much, Evelyn, for that experience. So on that note of, you know, being a mentor, providing support, and having this greater capacity for empathy, just wanted to kind of preface the next question on this theme of it takes a village. I feel like APIA Scholars staff, we know that our volunteers are essential in like carrying out the work that we do in our programs and services. And so as volunteers, could you please share with us, what does it mean to be part of this community of the APIA Scholars Network as a volunteer? So Cliff, would you mind starting us off?
Yeah, I mean, the long and short of it, it's an honor and a privilege to be a part of the community. You know, just having the blessing of the actual scholarship and the financial help that provided was amazing. But then to have the support network after that, and then to be an active part of that community, you know, and giving back, and also like, there's so many opportunities that APIA Scholars allows, you know, whether it's through scholarship, you know, application reading, through signing up to be a mentor, through signing up to be at some of their events pre-pandemic. It's an amazing community. It's a growing community. I'm amazed at the numbers of like 7,200 scholars out there, and so to have that infrastructure and the personnel to support that type of growth and that community is amazing. You guys are doing a great job, and I'm just, you know, it's an honor to be a part of that.
Yeah, I'll jump in too, because to build off of what Cliff was saying, being a part of this ecosystem, and I unfortunately was not young at a point in my life where I could have been an API scholar. And so now with the truths of my own experience, it's really important to make sure that I channel that. The privileges that I enjoy now in my life then is coupled with that responsibility of how can I send the elevator back down? How can I build an escalator to help someone get further in life? And that's really important. That is the well of gratitude that people are able to draw from when work gets crazy and life gets all over the place. Then you are able to come back to that space, come back to that village to be able to charge up and to move forward. And one thing that I also wanted to share in the success of your mentees, and the further they go, the more that there is reward in my own journey and my own experience. And I think that's been something that has been very highlighted in my engagement with the APIA community, because I think when you harness the the learnings from code switching and all the different ways that it shows up, whether you're from family to going to school to going to work, that just means that you have a larger suite of emotional vernacular and tools on how to engage in tough decisions, tough, complex work situations, complex problem solving. And what I love about first gen students, and in particular API students, is that they are brilliant and they don't know it. And that kind of confident humility is what's going to change the world, because you're able to meet that common ground with all the different spaces and places that you occupy.
Wonderful. Thank you, Christian, for that. I like that visual of that escalator, and it's two-way. I'm definitely going to use that next time. Before we move on, just wanted to give some space if the other panelists would like to contribute to this topic. All right. So as you all know, API Scholars has a tagline: educate, elevate, and empower. And so with that, I think that is kind of like the theme in which we center our programs and how we view to uplift, the next generation of API students. So for the panelists, does that tagline, educate, elevate, and empower, resonate with you when working alongside the next generation of scholars or even young APIA professionals? So with that, I'll have Evelyn start us off.
Yeah, I think the tagline of APIA that resonated the most with me is empowerment. I come from the lens of being like low income, first gen, but also a queer student. And so when I was mentoring my cohort, I think me being so unapologetically myself allowed them to be very vulnerable with me about certain struggles that they feel like they have to hide in their own lives. And so it honestly is like really, really inspiring to see them be so vulnerable because when I was their age, I was not anywhere near that. And so to see them be so unapologetically themselves, and it really gives me hope, because I have a little 18-year-old sister. So when I saw them, I see like my little sister too, and everything that I want, like all the resources that I want to give her. And like specifically for me, like I said, I'm first gen. Both my parents like didn't even graduate high school. And that's a thing that I try to keep under wraps for a long time. I was really embarrassed about it when I went to college and try to like pretend like I know everything, because I didn't want anyone to know that I didn't know anything. But I think one thing that really helped my students was like knowing that no one knows anything. Everyone acts like they know what's going on, but it's okay to just say that I don't know. And what I loved about APIA when I was a scholar was that I was given a space where I can say, I don't know how to do the FAFSA. I don't know like what the pros and cons are of like the social fraternity, like little stuff like that. I think having a space where I think for a lot of my students, it was the only time when they had a space where they could just be themselves and it wouldn't go anywhere and it wouldn't affect them in any way. It's a nice space to have. So definitely empowerment is a big factor for me.
Great, thank you, Evelyn, and also for sharing that. It's always good to create those spaces as you are like mentoring and working with scholars and providing, even just like a listening ear, and your presence alone allows people to open up. And loved how you highlighted that idea of, when you are a mentor and working alongside these scholars, they really do receive well your presence of being supportive and your guidance. Is there any other panelists that would like to contribute to this question?
Yeah, I'll jump in here.
Karen, I just want to, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead, Shubha. No, please, after you.
No, I just wanted to add, right, when you say educate, I would say, right, for me, being associated with APIA was a different kind of education for me. So education never stops, right? And with education, probably you can elevate yourself and empower yourself. You don't need anybody else, is what I feel. Right? Working with APIA, I sort of have gotten this insight into, right? Like when I came into this country, I came in when I was in my like 20s, mid 20s, right? So for me, I thought the challenges I faced was sort of limited to me, right? And it wouldn't never carry forward to my kids because they are first gen, right? So when I see this, I mean, when I see this, when I interact with the APIA scholars, it's sort of, it's a two-way path, as Cliff said. I educated myself about, what does it take right, to address these things, or, it sort of brought in me that, right, this should be one of the things that I should fight for. Environment was always my passion. And now I think this is my second passion, right? Because it affects so many of us, because I never ever thought that, probably, first gen or second gen, and I have an executive director whose kids are fourth gen, right? He's third gen, and he says that he still sees it, right? His kids still comment, right? Why do I have tiny eyes? Why isn't my skin fair? And, it just hurts to think that, right? We never thought when we moved across borders that we would be facing this one day, and maybe, our kids and their kids would face this, right? So I say this is also education, right? Not just going to college, or, right, every experience is education. So be ready to educate yourself wherever you are, right? And it will surely empower you, right? And then you can elevate yourself. Sometimes there is no need for somebody else to empower you, but you can, right, with the right kind of education. So that really, those three words really resonate with me. And, I keep telling my kids about it all the time.
Yeah, that was great, Shubha. I think just to chime in here real quick, everybody's kind of covered it really nicely. But yeah, obviously the education, the elevation, and the empowerment, they're all there, right? Being a mentor, in the capacity that I've helped out with APIA scholars, I mean, I'm able to see it on a one-to-one basis with each of my mentees. Each of them have their own doubts and their own fears, and so it's an opportunity for me to kind of help them through their thinking, and kind of like how Evelyn talked about, allowing them to be a little bit vulnerable by first me being vulnerable with them, and kind of sharing my mindset and sharing kind of some of the obstacles I faced. I think a common thread that we all share, as alumni or recipients of scholarships, is that, especially need-based scholarships, is that, we're coming in from lower income families, shared cultural background from Asian Americans. And so there's kind of like a scarcity mindset, I guess, in terms of like, you have to be responsible for your family before you're responsible for yourself, or you have to, you have to think about your career in kind of one, straightforward, mindset. But I think the programs that API is putting in place by connecting mentors to mentees, and having these types of summits and whatnot, allow, the scholarship recipients to be empowered to think outside of the box, to be empowered to take risks, to be empowered to, self-actualize and become the best versions of themselves, rather than limit their growth and development. And so I think, the people, the events, the systems, they're all there. And so, yeah, you guys are definitely doing that. Educate, elevate, empower, and it's an honor to be a part of it. That's all I got.
Christian, would you like to chime in here? Thank you, Cliff.
Sure thing. I mean, for me, all those different elements are, they are elements of a community. And I think that's what's really great, is that you can really benefit from having someone who plays your big sibling to someone who is your professional mentor. That mentorship comes at many different levels. It's not just someone who is, and the way that we're taught to think of mentorship is someone who's beyond your years and can teach you things that you don't know, but you can find mentorship in one another. So being a part of who you're learning with in the summit or on the panel with together. I'm learning from my fellow panelists today about their different lived experiences. And I think when you take on the complex identity that is AAPI, and then you throw yourself into the work, professional and personal space, it really does require a lot of different perspectives. And so you have access to a big data pool that becomes your pool of insight and inspiration, that you ultimately will learn what's going to work for you. So I am just a huge fan of those kinds of frameworks that allow you to actively, how can I learn from this? How can I hold up somebody? And how can I unwind the scripts that tell me that I am less valuable. To Evelyn's point earlier about hiding the parts of you that make you you, if I had learned that a lot earlier in my career, of those things that I thought were holding me back, that those actually end up becoming your power, so that when you enter these different spaces, you have a different perspective to bring to the table, and your policies, your products, or your services all become more inclusive by nature, because they're really capturing a larger swath of people. And I'll pause there.
Great. Thank you so much, panelists, for those responses. They were just so insightful, and I think it segues really well with our next question that's on the theme of identity. You know, speaking about myself, I had to grapple over the years, like, what is my identity and how does that look like in different settings? So when I was studying abroad during grad school, I felt like my identity and the concerns and my priorities were very different than when I was like entering into the workforce for the first time. But with all of that, I understood that I bring my identity in all those spaces. So as that is the center of the next question, panelists, could you please share any experiences that you have related to your own API identity and navigating that that professional setting? What did you learn? What insights? There are people joining this webinar that may be scholars, current scholars, alumni that may resonate with the experiences that you could share. Christian, I'll throw it back to you for that.
Amazing. I truly believe that variance equals value. And so in order to lead a diverse world, you have to live a diverse life. And so by being able to understand, when you look at a group of stakeholders, whether it be teachers, students, professors, staff, faculty, that you're inculcated with the agility of trying to problem solve in different ways. Now, in particular, I find that my call to action is to complexify the model minority myth, or also to take away monolithic thinking about the checkbox of Asian on the US Census. And so I try to invite people to take perspective of, while there might be some populations that are benefiting from these systems changes and policies, not every Asian background and experience is enjoying those same privileges in the same way. And so for me, in particular, in response to news of the increase of AAP identity violence against the AAPI community, it's important for me to kind of understand how to emotionally grapple with those topics. And there are a lot of times where, I don't know why my parents aren't talking about this, or I don't know why I feel emotionally unenergized when I show up to work, and thinking about what is that emotional labor offset that I need. And part of navigating that, it's easier to do that when you know that you're not alone. And that's why I think the API community and tapping into both friends and family, as well as my professional network, has been the way to kind of alleviate that stress, is by being able to do it together. So I think in summary, that you can't uncouple your identity to what you do. It is all inextricably linked. And unless you find that harmony of how to balance all those different things, then it'll start to manifest in a lot of unhealthy ways. And so I think being able to be all that intersectionality that Evelyn talked about, as well as like showing up as you are, is really the space to be, because there's never a place where you're going to be stress-free. That's a false goal of trying to live into a world where I'm stress-free. It's about your ability to move in and out of that space. And that resilience has been taught to me by my parents' sacrifice. It also is in the great scholars who I'm working with, who are looking to change the world in problems that actually matter. So I think being connected to this API community has been such a wealth of gratitude and fulfillment in my experience working with API scholars.
Yeah, thank you so much for that insight, Christian. I love that line that you said, that ability to move in different spaces and you carry forth your identity in that. I guess a follow-up question, same with like the sharing your experiences about your API identity. Shuba, you learned about API scholars through your employee resource group at General Motors. How is that, being tied and connected to an Asian affinity group at General Motors?
Okay. When I started with General Motors, that was 16 years back, I started in a place where it was predominantly white. There were only few Black people, and then a whole bunch of Asians got hired in at the same time. And we would see that, right? All Asians would sit on one side of the cafeteria, all the whites in one side of the cafeteria, and all the Blacks. no employee resource groups you could talk to, right? If you found somebody, your community or somebody, or sometimes, even like, with your team, that's how you moved with. There was nothing specifically you could lean on. Nobody talked about anything, right? It's good that people talk right now. We have a dialogue about this. And what I feel, right, like and I think all these resource groups started about 10 years back. And again, we were very split up between, right, by countries, right? We were like India had one, China had one, Korea had one. So, but the participation in those was very limited because everybody wants to do their work and go home, right? So it was like, they had a few cultural activities, and a lot of things that bothered us was never discussed, right? We would never have that. It was only, oh, this is my New Year's day, so we celebrate a new year. Oh, this is a huge festival in my country, so we celebrate that, right? But we never really discussed everything was like, right? I don't know whether it's our community did not want to open up, or I don't know what the obstacle was, right? It was really quiet. About 2 years back, suddenly they said GM cannot afford to really host these so many different employee resource groups country-wise, right? Why don't we do it by region-wise? And we were all pulled under Asian connections, right? And that's where I think, I don't know what happened at that time. Everything really changed from that time. People started having these open discussions about, like, these are some of the things that I'm facing in my workplace, right? And I don't know, like, I really embrace my identity, but sometimes, it may be a hindrance in whatever, right? When I'm talking in a meeting, maybe, I'm talked over or whatever, right? So suddenly when we were all brought in as an Asian community, really things started opening up. And unless you speak or you bring things in open, there is no change. So we see a lot of change in the way our resource groups are working right now. And I guess now everywhere you have these employee resource group, right? Be it in college or be it in companies where you work. So I would suggest all of the APIA scholars, right? That's the first thing you need to sort of, join these resource groups. And that is where you feel like you're part of the community, right? So, and then that is where you can really have like a transparent and open dialogue, and people really resonate with you. They understand where you're coming from, because a lot of times, I get told even today, right? Oh, Shubha, why don't you apply for this position? It's for a diversity candidate. That's how they speak, right? I really feel offended, right? I don't want to be in that position because I'm a diversity candidate. I want to be because I'm capable to do the job based on my capability, right? So I guess, like, we really brought out a newsletter last year, right? Sort of like an education to everybody in GM. Like when you say these things, like even you might think it's a joke, right? But it really offends people at the end of the day, right? And people were shocked to be, I don't think they realized what they were doing. I guess if we had not come in together as a community, we would never have been able to do that, is what I feel. So really my 2 years, once we have this whole GM Asian connections, as we call it, when this whole group came in together, we have been involving with, I would say the right, like APIA scholars and the right groups. We have another STEM nonprofit that we associate with. Again, it is from the Asian background. So I think even our vision has changed, and we know sort of where to go next. So I would suggest all the scholars, please be in touch with your community wherever you are. That is where you get your strength from. So that's all from my side, Karen.
Thank you, Shubha, for that. I love that takeaway, like to learn about the experience. Every company is different, the evolution of how a company can support their employees, and how you were able to like leverage those connections to your own professional development as you navigated that professional setting. I will also just provide some space for Evelyn or any other panelists that want to talk more about this topic.
Yeah, going off what Shiva was saying about navigating your professional setting, I'm 21. I'm like the youngest one here. And so right now I'm preparing for law school and I graduated UC Berkeley last year. And I think I want to become a civil rights attorney. So being in a very white dominated, male dominated space, I've always had to kind of lead with a very firm, serious voice because I'm also 4'11", very short, and I'm very peppy naturally. And so I don't know if it was like my age or my height or my ethnicity or a combination of all that, but I've been told by a lot of the attorneys that I worked for, the paralegals that I worked for, that they're surprised at how outspoken I am or that my English was really good. And like, I got my bachelor's in English. So to just hear that was just very strange for me. But I think because I'm so young, I just assumed that that's what I had to put up with. And I think a lot of students also feel that way, that like they have to put their happiness on hold and who they are on hold to exist within these like white dominated, also usually male dominated spaces. And like you can be happy later when you have like when you're established in your career. But I think one thing that APIA has also provided me and showed me is that you can take up space. And I think a lot of young people feel very uncomfortable with taking up space because they don't feel like they have the right to. But as young as you guys are, I really want to encourage you to, if you feel uncomfortable in your workspace because you feel like there's some form of discrimination, there's a reason for it, and that's completely valid. And you need to talk to someone about it, whether that be a mentor, your parents, the HR person at your work. Bring it up in some way, take up space in some way, and don't feel uncomfortable about it. Because you absolutely deserve to feel comfortable in whatever space you're in, whether that be like your classroom, your workspace, whatever. And I think I want to mention too was that I'm also a second generation immigrant. Like my parents came here from Vietnam. And I think a lot of things that me and my friends talk about is how our parents came here to give us a better life. And so we want to owe it back to them and have a stable job and like be very safe in the career sector. But it's like kind of the dichotomy of your parents came here to give you a better life, but you're completely shaping your life around doing something you don't want to do. And it's just that that conflict is, I feel like a lot of people struggle with. And so having these conversations about like your family honor and like providing for your family, but also needing stability in the workplace is definitely things that you should be talking about with your friend. You should be talking about with your mentors or whoever it may be. And don't be afraid to talk about it.
Great. Thank you, Evelyn, for that. I love the takeaway of, it's okay to take up space. And even when you feel uncomfortable, those are those opportunities and moments we need to have the courage to speak out and reach out, if that's within the community, if that's within your network of peers and friends. And so thank you for those like words of encouragement as well.
Yeah, just to close up the loop and make it 4 for 4 here on the panel about identity. I think those are really great stories that everyone shared. Just a couple of things I want everyone to walk away with. As Asian Americans, Pacific Islanders, and everyone has touched on this in some way, shape, or form. I think Evelyn, especially, like you want to just unapologetically be yourself, and just own it, right? If you're Vietnamese, you're Vietnamese, and you're first generation, whatever it may be. And it's hard for some people to, especially if they're coming from lower income backgrounds or they're coming from disenfranchised, communities. It's really hard to really, like Evelyn said, to just take up space, right? And really own that space and be unapologetic about it. And so I think you're seeing that with, the Stand With Asians movement and all this stuff. And you're seeing more and more empowerment there. And I think, it's, APIA Scholars helps to kind of empower the ability for, these scholarship recipients to, to claim their space, right? And to value themselves and feel like they're enough just as they are. And so, yeah, I think being part of the APIA Scholars community has actually helped me in kind of my identity, even, as a, almost 40-year-old working professional, like, it's a constant journey to kind of figure out who you are and your identity and being comfortable with that. And so I wish I were, as mature as like Christian or Evelyn, as younger when I was a younger guy back then. But you guys are in definitely really good spaces, and I'm glad you guys are leading movements wherever you guys are.
Great, thank you, Cliff, for that. I love that takeaway message of just valuing who you are, right? And not be like apologetic about it. And even though we may be uncomfortable in certain situations, I think these words of encouragement really resonate with everybody who's attending this webinar. I know for myself as well, I mean, as young as Evelyn, but when just hearing all of your experiences is also a great reminder for myself as well in our journey. So on that note, just wanted to also provide some space and to hear about any other involvement that you may have in the community. So it could be either with, API scholars, if you want to share anything that you're doing right now. I think as volunteers, we're always involved with many different projects. So we'd love to just hear what is everybody up to in their community.
I want to take one of the questions that's in the Q&A, which is about volunteering in giving up your time, about, do you need to have a concrete profession? What should you know in before you volunteer? So I'm going to kind of take and lump all those together, because no act of volunteering is too small. So I'll tell you that. I also serve as a reader. So when I, seasonally, when I know that I can dedicate some time to reading some brilliant stories, that I'm going to do that. There are sometimes things that are 1 month in duration, so you can be a career advisor, which I've stepped in to do some resume reviewing for that. But the idea is give when you can. And so when you are able to do that, don't think that you have to sign up for some of these Mount Everest volunteer opportunities, because you really can find value in all those tiny different things. Even it's offering your email address to someone who's on the call, or LinkedIn messaging and giving them a 30-minute conversation. There's no amount of volunteering that is too small. And so give what you can when you can, because we know that COVID-19 has taught us to be adaptable and to kind of learn as we go. But part of being able to feel that fulfillment in life, I think, is that gratitude. And that's why we all are here to give our time, energy, and when we can, money, to donate to things that are important to us.
Being the oldest here in the panel, I would say that, right, depending on what phase of life you're in, sometimes you do not have time to volunteer, right? Do what you can. Like when my kids were young, I needed a volunteer myself, right? I wanted somebody to come and cook for me or whatever, right? So when do small things, take baby steps, right? One thing what I saw on the list, Karen, was mental health, right? I think volunteering is the best solution for any mental health issues, right? And for me, as my kids have grown older, I have more time. I'm involved with different things. So that is where, for me, the easiest way to do it was through my employer. We have so many different organizations. We have an environmental organization. We have a women's organization. That's the easier way to do it if you don't know how to get started, right? And if you have any community organizations, I'm from India, so we are big on temples and, religion. So they do a lot of charitable work as well, and social work. They do a lot of education, teaching people native languages, whatever it is that you do, right? That makes you happy, start doing it, right? And you cannot always devote the same amount of time or energy as you navigate your life. There are different challenges that you face yourself, but have that on your agenda, right? Like a few hours a day, or like a few dollars here, a few dollars there. The gift of giving gives back to you more then. So that's my experience so far. So I'm really glad that, with General Motors, we have this opportunity where you can involve yourself with different, I mean, it's just so many different things, right? We have something called Jumpstart, where you can hook up with somebody who started yesterday in General Motors, right? And help them navigate through the different organizations and things like that. So whatever it is, right? So I'm really fortunate to work for a company where, you have provided these opportunities. So I would say that there is no better way for you to feel better about yourself or empower yourself. Volunteering is, I think, that's been my life's biggest lesson, I should say, till date. So go for it. Like, whoever wants to be, like, everybody can do this.
Yeah, just to second Christian's comment about, you don't have to really, go for that home run in terms of
I think we lost Cliff.
I think we lost Cliff. Hope that he can, tune with us again. But just wanted to also provide some space if the other panelists wanted to continue on this note and share a little bit about your involvement in the community.
Yeah, I can add on. We'll do it for Cliff. So right now I intern I'm working as a crisis counselor for the Trevor Project, which is like a crisis hotline for LGBT youth. And like Shubha was saying earlier, I think mental health is such a taboo topic within the Asian American community. A lot of people feel like they can't talk about mental health to their parents because they wouldn't understand. And I think what tagging off what Christian said too about needing a certain skill set, the way that I got this position was I just applied and they also train you. So there are a lot of volunteer positions where they completely provide training for you, and all they care about is just if you have time and if you have passion to do it. So I think you can really seek those out. And I also interned for Black Lives Matter last summer. And the way that I got that position was my friend was an intern for March for Our Lives, which is about gun violence. And really just word of mouth, like enter those spaces, look for Instagram pages about activism, follow them. They usually post all the time about volunteer opportunities that could just be like cold calling for them or like sending out emails for them. Any like little bit of help you can do, they definitely would love to have you. And I'm sure like any little bit that you can contribute, they would very much appreciate.
Great, thank you for that. There was a lot of great content and advice. Some of the things that resonated with me was give what you can. No small gesture is always valued. Shubha, with the whole tapping into your resource, and also with Evelyn as well, get involved if that is your company or just like other communities and organizations in your area. So thank you for that. To wrap up, I mean, we're almost at time. We'll ask one last question before we have closing remarks. So as an API scholar volunteer, if you have any advice to anyone who's interested in volunteering with us, what would that be?
Cliff, your audio is not coming through if you're said. I'll go ahead and take it from here. I know the technology struggles. Sometimes the Bluetooth doesn't work when we want it to. Advice for people who are looking to volunteer: stay connected. Obviously, being on listservs, keeping an eye out on social media is one way. I always like for people to get in touch with stories. So, I mean, obviously we are all humans who you're only seeing a glimpse into who we are through this presentation, but connect offline, connect in the periphery is my advice, because it's not always about what people put out as content, but it's really engaging in the stickiness of life that I think you'll get to learn more about it. Find allyship with different AAPI leaders in and around your different spaces, because even if it is tied to APIA scholars or not directly, the work is so great that every piece that you do is going to advance the work. And I think that we find shared solidarity in shared lived experiences. So even as Evelyn was talking about, showing up for the needs of others, no matter how big or small, is an important piece of learning how to navigate life and how to coexist in a harmony that is more inclusive of a world. So I think being able to get connected in the periphery would be my advice piece for closing.
Sorry about all those technical difficulties. Can you hear me now? All good?
You got it.
All right, good.
Yes, yeah.
Okay. Last point, I would say just do it. Start small, but just do it. If you're thinking about volunteering or getting involved or giving back in some way, it could just be a social media post. It could just be an email. It could be signing up for a program like APIA Scholars. And see what you like and don't like, and then from there you can kind of build on that. And so I think APIA Scholars actually provides kind of that structure and those opportunities to actually explore those opportunities. So just do it, start small, and just keep going.
Yeah, I guess all the scholars right now are media savvy, social media savvy, right? So there are a lot of those crowdfunding projects that are ongoing right now, where you either translate stuff into different languages, like health and hygiene. I do that because I'm from South India, and the language is is only spoken in one state there. So I do that a lot, where I translate content regarding mental health, women's education, women's empowerment, health and hygiene. So you can do translations, you can do like audio recordings for them, and take some pictures and things like that. So there is a lot of things. I mean, if you just Google it, you get it. There are like tons of things that you can do it while we are stuck at home in this COVID situation. So it's out there, just Google it.
To end it off, I think the biggest barrier for a lot of students when they think about volunteering is time management. But for me, the way that I kind of factor into my schedule is I think of it as self-care. Like, it's just a time where it's not school, it's not work, it's just a time for you to give back to your community and have some fun with people that you relate to. So if you think about it as more self-care as opposed to like work, it definitely energizes you more to do the work.
Great. Thank you all panelists for all your sharing and experiences. I thoroughly enjoyed all the resources, information sharing, and also your life experiences that you were able to connect with us in this short hour. So thank you again for taking the time to be a panelist at this webinar. And so just a quick couple of housekeeping items to talk about. For anybody who's tuning in, if you loved what you heard and want to be engaged with APIA Scholars, please visit our website. We have a volunteer form that you can fill out, and that's like a quick way to be involved. If we are not offering any volunteer opportunities at the moment, please still fill that out, because we'll reach out to you with information on how to register and sign up and be involved. Also, for support, if you liked to learn more about how you can support from a funding perspective, you can also text give or donate to the number displayed, and all the proceeds will go to our scholarships and programs. APIA Scholars is 18 years young, teenager. So with your gift of $18, it can go a long way. And lastly, we're also always looking for supporters to fund our programs and services. All the programs that our volunteers share today, that could be, provided by foundation support, corporate support, or even just companies that want to stay engaged. So my contact information is on this slide. If you would like to support our programs, please reach out to me. And lastly, we have a recording of this webinar, and it will be up on our YouTube channel, in a couple of days. So stay tuned for that. And lastly, we have another Innovators for Good May session, and that will be in combination with our spoken word night on May 12th. And May is such an important month for the API community. It is Asian Pacific American Heritage Month, and then also Mental Health Awareness Month. So stay tuned, watch your inboxes, and we'll send you information on how to sign up and participate. And lastly, if you want to include yourself or others in the invite list, email us your contact information at events@apisf.org, and we'll include your contact information. Thank you again for all the panelists. Thank you for everyone who's tuning in, and hope to hear from you soon. Have a great afternoon.
Thanks, Karen. Take care, everybody.
Bye, everyone.